Aelric knew two things for certain. One, the Jovian gas mining platform was as charming as a depressed toaster. And two, if anyone was going to die a spectacularly stupid death today, it was probably going to be him. Not because he was especially unlucky, but because fate had a twisted sense of humor and Aelric was its favorite punchline. He squinted at the data screen. Numbers blinked back at him like taunting eyes. Sure, Aelric was an engineer, but even he could recognize when the numbers started looking like hieroglyphics, something was about to go gloriously wrong. "Look at this crap," he muttered, stabbing a finger at the screen. "Looks like the platform's got a death wish." The platform, lovingly named the Defiant by someone with a rich sense of irony, was home. If home was a tin can in a perpetual death grip of Jupiter's gravitational embrace, not that it was all bad. It had its perks, like, really efficient air conditioning. Aelric was part of the engineering cast, the ones who kept the Defiant from spinning off into the cosmos like a yo-yo on a bad string. Which seemed noble until you realized they were one wrong button press from being smeared across Jupiter's atmosphere. "Figures," Aelric grumbled. "All this tech and still can't prevent a good old-fashioned cock-up." He had half a mind to ignore the anomaly, pretend he never saw it, but there it was, glaring at him like a particularly aggressive pimple. So instead of embracing blissful ignorance, he did what any reasonable human would do. He called Marn. Marn, a technician from the lower caste, had a knack for fixing things most people didn't know were broken. She was also more cynical than a 3-day-old sandwich. Precisely why Aelric liked her. He tapped his comms unit. "Hey, Marn, you busy? I've got a situation here that requires your unique brand of nihilism." The static fizzled for a moment before Marn's voice crackled through. "Sweet-talking me again, Aelric. If you're about to propose, I'm gonna need a ring made of something fancier than rust. How about saving our sorry asses from a fiery doom instead?" he retorted. "Meet me at the data core." Marn arrived with her usual flair, sauntering in like she owned the place. "What's the crisis this time? Please tell me it's not another we're all going to die situation. I've only got so much patience for impending doom." "Oh, it's not just impending," Aelric replied with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "It's practically knocking on the door with a casserole." He pointed at the screen where the data was still dancing its merry jig of chaos. "This mess here, it's not just a glitch, it's a full-blown anomaly, and not the fun kind." Marn peered at the screen, her expression somewhere between bored and mildly murderous. "Looks like the platform's brain is having a midlife crisis." "Yeah, except instead of buying a sports car, it's threatening to explode," Aelric said, rubbing his temples. "So, any bright ideas before we're all toast?" Marn pulled out a small toolkit, the kind that suggested she'd be just as comfortable defusing bombs as fixing toasters. "Let me poke around. Maybe I can slap some sense into it." As Marn worked her magic, Aelric leaned against the wall, watching her with a mix of admiration and mild terror. Aelric had always admired Marn's ability to remain unfazed by impending disaster. If she ever panicked, it meant they were already dead or worse, out of coffee. "You ever think about quitting?" Marn asked, not looking up from her work. Aelric chuckled dryly. "Every damn day, but where else am I going to get this kind of excitement? And by excitement, I mean daily existential dread," she grinned. "What's life without a bit of doom hanging over your head, right?" Aelric nodded, watching as Marn deftly navigated the digital labyrinth. "So, you seeing anything worth panicking over?" "Depends," Marn replied. "How do you feel about catastrophic failure?" "I'm personally against it," Aelric said, crossing his arms. "But that's just me." "Figures," Marn said, closing up her tool kit. "There's definitely something screwy here. It's like the platform's trying to run away but doesn't know how to say goodbye." Aelric frowned. "Think it's sabotage." "Either that or the Defiant's trying to date a comet," Marn replied. "But honestly, I'd bet on sabotage. Maybe someone's got a personal vendetta against oxygen." Aelric sighed. "Great. Just when I thought things couldn't get any shittier." "Don't worry," Marn said with a reassuring pat on the back. If we blow up, at least we'll get to skip tomorrow's shift. Always the optimist, Aelric grumbled, already mentally preparing himself for the bureaucratic nightmare that was about to ensue. They had to report this mess to the higher-ups, the so-called genetic elites, who ran the platform like an exclusive club. Aelric had always found the caste system quaint, if quaint meant irritating as hell. Aelric got back on the comms. "Heads up," he told Marn. "We're about to swim with the sharks in pinstripes." "Oh joy," Marn replied. "Shall I wear my best groveling face?" "Depends. How good are you at pretending to respect authority?" Aelric asked. Marn shrugged. "Like a pro. Just don't expect me to curtsy." With that, they made their way to the command deck, where the elite caste sat in their ivory tower of delusion. As the door slid open, Aelric took a breath. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and self-importance. "Ah, the commoners have arrived," drawled a voice from behind a desk that was more ornament than furniture. "What brings you up from the depths?" "Oh, nothing much," Aelric said, forcing a smile. "Just a slight case of potential platform-wide combustion." The elite members exchanged bored glances, their expressions as flat as Jupiter's landscape. "And you're certain this isn't just, operator error?" the voice asked, dripping with condescension. "Well, unless the platform decided to freelance as a firework," Marn cut in, "I'd say yes, we're certain." "Charming," the voice said, unimpressed. "We'll look into it. You may return to your duties." Aelric and Marn exchanged a glance. The kind that said, "These idiots are going to get us all killed," without needing words. Back in the corridor, Marn shook her head. "Bureaucrats. They'll be the death of us all." "If we're lucky, they'll go first," Aelric replied, trying to muster a smirk. "You think they'll actually do anything?" "When pigs fly," Marn said, her voice laced with sarcasm. "We're on our own, Aelric, business as usual." They made their way back to the engineering deck, the hum of machinery their only companion. Aelric felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders like a particularly malevolent parrot. "So what's the plan?" Marn asked, snapping Aelric out of his thoughts. "We do what we always do," Aelric said. "Keep this rust bucket from doing a swan dive into oblivion." Marn nodded, her expression one of grim determination. "And if we fail," Aelric shrugged, "then at least we'll go out with a bang. Besides, who needs retirement, right?" They shared a moment of dark humor, the kind that only comes when you've got nothing else to lose. As they got back to work, Aelric couldn't shake the feeling that the platform was holding its breath, waiting for something to give. It was the calm before the storm, and Aelric had the unsettling sense that they were already in the eye, with chaos lurking just beyond the horizon. But for now, all they could do was hold on and hope that when the storm hit, they'd be ready, or at least as ready as anyone could be when faced with the prospect of being turned into cosmic confetti. Aelric and Marn returned to the engineering deck with the grace of two marionettes who had just had their strings tangled by an overzealous child. The air was thick with the usual aroma of burnt circuits and desperation, a scent that could only be described as ode to hopelessness. Aelric eyeballed the data screen like it owed him money. "So, what's the verdict, Doc?" Aelric asked, watching Marn as she continued to fiddle with a bundle of wires that seemed to lead everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. "Verdict?" Marn snorted. "If this platform was a patient, it's the kind you'd recommend a nice, long rest." "Like eternity." "Great," Aelric said, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's just what I wanted to hear. Any chance we could just, unplug it and plug it back in?" "Sure," Marn replied with a roll of her eyes. "Right after we find the cosmic extension cord." "Face it, Aelric, we're screwed unless we figure this out." Aelric sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on him like a malfunctioning gravity simulator. "We need to know what caused this. If it's sabotage, it's the worst kind, one that leaves us holding the bomb when it goes off." "Yeah, well, newsflash," Marn said, brandishing a tool like a wand. "The ruling elite thinks it's human error. Probably think we spilled coffee on the nuke button. Can you blame them?" Aelric shrugged. "Remember when we almost jettisoned the life support module because it was making strange noises?" Marn chuckled. Okay, that one's on me, but they're not even listening. Typical. They're like goldfish with a superiority complex. They'll be singing a different tune when they are vacuum-packed in their fancy suits, Aelric muttered, glancing at the data screen again. The numbers were still on their drunken waltz, oblivious to the chaos they inspired. So Marn said, plugging in a device that beeped with the enthusiasm of a dying canary. What's the plan, genius? Aelric stared at the screen, his expression as blank as a politician's promise. We need to isolate the anomaly and see if we can reset the system. We've got to act before this place decides to self-destruct in a spectacular display of incompetence. Marn nodded, her fingers dancing over the console. You got it. I'll see if I can isolate the signal. Meanwhile, you might want to talk to those in the know. Maybe there's someone around here who isn't wearing blinders. Good luck with that, Aelric grumbled, heading towards the comm station. I feel like I'm trying to get a penguin to fly. As Marn worked her magic, Aelric tapped into the comms network, hoping to reach someone who wasn't completely useless. He leaned into the microphone, his voice a mix of sarcasm and desperation. This is Aelric on the engineering deck. If anyone has a clue about the anomaly, now's the time to spill it. Silence greeted him, confirming his suspicions that the platform was populated by a mix of the oblivious and the indifferent. Finally, a voice crackled through, as comforting as a cold shower on a winter morning. Yeah, this is Kiev from the reactor bay, the voice said. I've noticed some weird fluctuations, like the reactors trying to do the cha-cha, reassuring, Aelric replied. Anything else that might help us not die today? Not unless you've got a spare reactor lying around, Kiev said. I'll keep an eye on things here. Good luck, Aelric sighed, cutting the connection. Great. Just great. Returning to Marn, he saw her frowning at the console, her expression a mix of concentration and annoyance. Good news or bad? Aelric asked, leaning over her shoulder. Depends, she said, squinting at the screen. If you like surprises, you'll love this. Do I want to know? Probably not, Marn replied. Looks like the anomaly is tied to the main gas intake. It's like someone set the dial to explode and walked away. Sabotage. Aelric asked, feeling his stomach drop. Or the universe's way of saying it hates us, Marn said with a shrug. But yeah, I'd bet on sabotage. Whoever did it knew exactly where to hit. Aelric rubbed his chin, his mind racing. We've got to fix this before it goes boom. And since the higher-ups are about as useful as a trapdoor on a lifeboat, it's on us. Story of our lives, Marn muttered. So what's the plan, Captain? Aelric thought for a moment, the gears in his mind turning with audible effort. We need to reroute the gas intake. If we can decrease the pressure, we might be able to stabilize the system. Easier said than done, Marn said, cracking her knuckles. But hell, I'm game if you are. Let's get to it before the platform decides to redecorate the solar system with our insides, Aelric said, leading the way to the main control panel. The control room was a testament to function over form, filled with consoles that looked about as welcoming as a tax audit. Aelric and Marn moved quickly, their hands a blur as they adjusted settings and rerouted power. Hey Marn, Aelric said, breaking the tense silence. You ever think about what you'd do if you weren't here, risking life and limb for a bunch of ingrates? Oh, I don't know, Marn replied, her tone as dry as the Martian desert. Maybe open a bakery. You know, something that involves fewer chances of spontaneous combustion. Baking, huh? Aelric chuckled. I can see it now, Marn's explosive muffins. Now with extra bang, Marn shot back, grinning despite the situation. But seriously, why do we keep doing this? Because we're gluttons for punishment. Aelric suggested, his fingers dancing over the controls. Or maybe we just like the thrill of narrowly avoiding death. Speak for yourself, Marn said. I'd settle for avoiding death, full stop. The console beeped, drawing their attention back to the task at hand. The numbers on the screen were less frenzied now, and Aelric allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Looks like it's working, he said, though his tone was cautious. We've bought ourselves some time. Great. Now we can die slowly instead of all at once, Marn replied, her voice laced with sarcasm. But seriously, good job, Aelric. Don't jinx it, Aelric warned. We've still got to figure out who's behind this. I'm not keen on a repeat performance. Marn nodded, her expression serious. We'll get to the bottom of it. But for now, we just need to keep this tin can from blowing up. As they continued to work, Aelric couldn't shake the feeling that they were still on borrowed time. The platform was like a sleeping giant, and Aelric knew that all it would take was one wrong move to awaken it. Several hours later, Aelric and Marn were still hunched over the console, their eyes gritty with fatigue. The platform had settled into an uneasy calm, but Aelric couldn't help but feel like they were sitting in the eye of a storm. So, Marn said, breaking the silence. What's the next step in our never-ending quest for survival? Aelric leaned back, running a hand through his hair. We need to dig deeper into the system's logs. See if there's anything that points to sabotage. Marn nodded, her fingers already moving over the keyboard. Got it. I'll see what I can find. The logs were a maze of data, each entry more cryptic than the last. Aelric watched as Marn navigated the labyrinth with the skill of someone who had spent far too many nights decoding the system's peculiar quirks. Anything? Aelric asked, trying to mask his impatience. Hold your horses, Marn muttered, her eyes scanning the lines of text. There's something here. Looks like an unauthorized access to the control system. Someone's been poking around where they shouldn't. Can you trace it back? Aelric asked, his heart pounding with the rhythm of grim determination. I'm working on it, Marn replied, her fingers flying over the keys. Give me a sec. Aelric watched the screen, feeling the tension coiling in his stomach like a snake ready to strike. Whoever was behind this had to be stopped, and quickly. Got it, Marn said abruptly, a note of triumph in her voice. Looks like the access came from the lower decks. Someone's been sneaking around, trying to cover their tracks. Aelric nodded, a plan forming in his mind. We need to get down there, see what we can find. If we catch the saboteur, we might be able to prevent this mess from getting worse. Lead the way, fearless leader, Marn said, shutting down the console. Let's go play detective. They left the control room, moving quickly through the narrow corridors. The lower decks were a maze of pipes and shadows, the kind of place where secrets thrived. Aelric felt a chill run down his spine as they descended, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. So, what are we looking for? Marn asked, her voice echoing off the metal walls. Anything out of place, Aelric replied, his eyes scanning the dimly lit corridor, and keep an ear out. We don't know who's down here. They moved cautiously, their footsteps barely audible over the hum of the platform's machinery. Aelric's mind raced with possibilities, each more dire than the last. If they didn't find the saboteur soon, it might be too late to stop the impending disaster. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the corridor, a metallic clatter followed by a curse. Aelric and Marn froze, exchanging a glance. Sounds like we're not alone, Marn whispered. Let's go, Aelric said, motioning for her to follow. They crept forward, careful to keep to the shadows, their senses on high alert. As they rounded a corner, Aelric caught sight of a figure hunched over a control panel, their back turned. The figure was muttering to themselves, their words a jumble of frustration and panic. Hey, Aelric called out, his voice firm. Step away from the panel. The figure spun around, eyes wide with surprise and fear. Aelric recognized them as one of the lower caste workers, someone he'd seen around but never spoken to. What are you doing here? Aelric demanded, his tone leaving no room for evasion. The worker hesitated, their eyes darting between Aelric and Marn as if calculating the odds of escape. Finally, they sighed, shoulders slumping in defeat. Fine, you got me, they said, raising their hands in a gesture of surrender. I'm the one messing with the system. Why? Marn asked, her voice sharp with accusation. The worker hesitated again, their expression a mix of guilt and defiance. Because this place is a death trap, they said finally. I'm just trying to survive. Aelric exchanged a glance with Marn, seeing the same realization reflected in her eyes. The saboteur wasn't some evil mastermind, just another cog in the machine trying to protect themselves from the inevitable collapse. Look, Aelric said, his tone softening. We get it. but screwing with the system isn't helping anyone. It's just making things worse. The worker looked between them, their expression conflicted. I didn't know what else to do, they admitted. Everything's falling apart and no one seems to care. Well, we care, Marn said, stepping forward. So how about we work together to fix this mess before it really blows up in our faces? After a moment, the worker nodded, their tense posture relaxing slightly. Okay, they said. Let's fix it. And so, with a reluctant ally in tow, Aelric and Marn set to work, hoping against hope that they could avert disaster and buy themselves a little more time in their precarious orbit around survival. As Aelric, Marn, and their newly acquired, somewhat panicked ally trudged through the dim, industrial labyrinth of the Defiant's lower decks, the oppressive weight of their situation hung over them like a particularly malevolent storm cloud. The air was heavy, with the scent of burning oil and desperation, a combination that usually spelled disaster in the making. Remind me why we're trusting the guy who tried to turn this place into a metal death trap, Marn muttered under her breath, her eyes flicking to the worker with a mixture of suspicion and annoyance. Because he's the only one who knows what buttons not to press, Aelric replied dryly. And right now, that's more help than we're getting from anyone else. The worker, a jittery fellow named Torben with a penchant for chewing his nails down to the quick, nodded along with Aelric's assessment. Look, I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand, he explained, as if that made everything better. I just wanted to buy some time until the higher-ups got their act together. High hopes for people who couldn't organize a piss-up in a brewery, Marn snorted. You'd have better luck waiting for Jupiter to sprout daisies. Their path wound through a series of narrow corridors that seemed to be designed specifically to make one feel claustrophobic. Pipes snaked along the walls like the entrails of some dead metallic beast, and the low hum of machinery provided a constant, nerve-jangling background soundtrack. Just as Aelric was about to make another pithy comment about their chances of survival, the lights flickered. The sudden darkness was as comforting as a tax audit, and that was before the automated defense system decided to throw its hat into the ring. A grinding noise echoed down the corridor, and the air was filled with a sudden rush of mechanical activity. Aelric knew that sound. He'd heard it in training, back when safety drills were less about survival and more about appeasing bureaucratic nonsense. Ah, hell, Marn groaned. The system's gone paranoid on us. Thinks we're the saboteurs. Brilliant, Aelric muttered, a sardonic edge to his voice. It was only a matter of time before this place developed a personality disorder. Torben looked around, wide-eyed and nervous. What do we do? First, we make sure we're not about to be ventilated by the platform, Aelric answered, scanning the ceiling for any signs of those charming little automated turrets that were supposed to be decommissioned ages ago. Of course, no one had gotten around to that, just like the rest of the maintenance. As if on cue, a panel in the wall slid open with all the discretion of a jack-in-the-box, revealing a sleek, gunmetal gray turret that whirred menacingly as it locked onto them. Everyone, down, Aelric barked, shoving Torben ahead of him as he dove for cover behind a stack of crates. The turrets opened fire, the air filling with the sharp, angry crackle of energy bolts. Aelric's ears rang, his pulse an erratic drumbeat against his ribs as he hugged the floor, cursing every deity he'd ever heard of and a few he'd made up on the spot. This is why I wanted to open a bakery, Marn grumbled from her own precarious cover, her voice barely audible over the din. No rogue AI, no homicidal turrets. Just flour and sugar, yeah, but where's the thrill in that? Aelric shot back, peeking out to get a better look at the control panel embedded in the wall beside the turret. Thrill is overrated, Marn replied, as another barrage of shots slammed into the crates. They shuddered under the impact, the smell of singed circuitry filling the air. So what's the plan, Captain? Aelric surveyed their options, which were as limited as a space station's booze supply after a long week. We need to disable that turret before it turns us into Swiss cheese, he said, eyeing the panel. But getting to it without being fried is the tricky part. Lovely, Marn said, eyes rolling. Do we have any brilliant ideas, or are we chalking this up as a learning experience? Torben, Aelric called, gesturing for the worker to join them. You got us into this mess. Any chance you've got a way to get us out? The worker swallowed hard, looking like a cornered animal as he contemplated their options. There should be a manual override, he stammered, nodding towards a console halfway down the corridor. But it's not exactly close. Of course it isn't, Marn said, a bitter laugh escaping her lips, because that would be too easy. All right, Aelric said, considering their options. Marn, you're with me. We'll draw its fire. Torben, you get to the console and shut it off. Wait, why do I have to be the one to? Torben began, but Aelric cut him off with a glare that could melt steel. Because you're the smallest target, Aelric said bluntly. And besides, you owe us one, remember. With that, the plan set, Aelric and Marn scrambled from behind the crates, weaving through the cluttered corridor as the turret shifted its focus, spitting energy bolts in their direction. The shots seared the air with their passage, close enough to make Aelric question his life choices in rapid succession. Keep moving, Marn shouted, pulling Aelric out of the way of another barrage. I'd rather not be a statistic today, thank you very much. Ditto, Aelric replied, adrenaline sharpening his senses as they ducked and dodged like they were in the galaxy's deadliest dance competition. Meanwhile, Torben took advantage of the distraction, skittering towards the console like a rat in a particularly unpleasant maze. The turret, for all its sophistication, was still a slave to its programming, following the larger, louder targets with an almost single-minded determination. As Aelric and Marn continued their deadly ballet, Torben reached the panel, frantically entering commands as the turret hesitated, its systems caught in a loop of conflicting priorities. For a terrifying moment, Aelric thought the gun might just decide to shoot everyone out of sheer annoyance. Then, with a shudder and a low whine, the turret powered down, its threat nullified. Aelric let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, taking a moment to revel in the sheer relief of being alive. Well, that was fun, Marn said, wiping her brow with the back of her hand. Let's never do it again, seconded, Aelric replied, turning to Torben. Nice work, Torben. I knew there was a reason we didn't leave you to get vaporized. The worker gave them a shaky thumbs up, clearly still processing the fact that he hadn't been turned into a vaguely humanoid scorch mark on the decking. All right, Aelric said, taking a moment to collect himself. We've got the turret down, but we still need to deal with the bigger problem. We've got to get back to the main system and figure out how to keep this platform from going kablooey. Marn pulled a face. Always the optimist, aren't you? Someone's got to be. Aelric replied with a half-smile as they regrouped and prepared to tackle their next challenge. The platform might be a ticking time bomb, but as long as they were alive, there was still a chance to defuse it. Together, the trio made their way back through the maze-like corridors, the air still crackling with the tension of their recent encounter. The platform's defenses might have been neutralized for now, but Aelric knew that things were far from over. Once we're at the main terminal, I'll need you both focused, he said as they rounded another corner. This isn't just about keeping the platform stable anymore. We need answers, and we need them fast. You think the higher-ups will actually listen? Marn asked, skepticism etched into her features. Not likely, Aelric replied, grim determination in his tone. But if we can provide proof of sabotage, maybe we can force them to do something useful for once. Besides, I'm not keen on a repeat performance with our friend the turret. They reached the main terminal, a hulking console that dominated the cramped room. Aelric could almost feel the weight of the task ahead pressing down on him, but he pushed the thought aside, focusing on the immediate challenge. All right, Torben, you're up, he said, gesturing to the terminal. We need to sift through the logs and find anything that points to sabotage. Torben nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard in a flurry of keystrokes. The screen flickered, displaying lines of code that scrolled past at a dizzying pace. Look for anything that stands out, Marn said, eyes narrowing as she scanned the data. Unauthorized access, changes in system protocols, anything that doesn't belong. Aelric watched as the data flowed past, his mind racing. He could feel the platform around them, a massive, unpredictable beast poised to wreak havoc at any moment. They needed to find the saboteur's trail and stop whatever was planned before it was too late. There, Torben exclaimed, pointing to a string of numbers that glowed ominously on the screen. That doesn't look right. Aelric leaned closer, scrutinizing the data. Looks like someone's been tampering with the platform's pressure systems. If they keep this up, it won't be long before it all goes to hell. What are our options? Marn asked, her voice tight with urgency. We need to reroute the pressure flow manually and override the changes, Aelric replied, his mind working at breakneck speed. If we can stabilize the system, we might be able to buy some time and prevent a catastrophe. No pressure then, Marn quipped, though her expression was serious. Let's get to it. They set to work, diving into the code with a single-minded focus born of necessity. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure wasn't an option. Aelric and Marn worked in tandem, their movements as precise as a well-rehearsed dance. Torben, despite his earlier missteps, proved to be an invaluable ally, his knowledge of the system helping them navigate its intricacies. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the tension in the room a palpable force. Aelric could feel the platform's instability, a simmering threat lurking beneath the surface. Almost there, Torben said, his voice strained. Just a few more adjustments, keep at it, Aelric urged, his own fingers flying over the controls as he monitored the system's status. Finally, with a triumphant beep, the console displayed a green notification. Pressure levels stabilized. We did it, Marn said, a grin spreading across her face. For now, anyway, Aelric exhaled, a mix of exhaustion and relief washing over him. They'd averted disaster, but the threat still loomed like a dark shadow, and they couldn't let their guard down. Good work, team, he said, looking between Marn and Torben. But we're not done yet. We need to find out who's responsible for this and make sure they can't pull another stunt like this. With the platform stabilized, they had a momentary reprieve, but Aelric knew that their work was far from over. The saboteur was still out there, and as long as they remained at large, the Defiant would never be truly safe. Let's get to it, Marn said, determination in her voice. They won't know what hit them. Aelric nodded, a grim smile on his lips. Together, they'd face whatever challenges lay ahead, fighting to protect not only themselves but everyone else trapped in this floating tin can with them. And maybe, just maybe, they'd find a way to turn the tide in their favor. The Defiant groaned like an ancient beast in its death throes, the metal walls vibrating under the strain of Jupiter's unyielding gravity. It was as though the gas giant itself was annoyed at having this oversized tin can loitering around its atmosphere. Aelric didn't blame it. He often felt the same way about his life choices. Well, this is just peachy, Marn muttered, her voice a dry rasp amidst the cacophony of alarms. If this ship had a pulse, I'd say it's having a heart attack. Aelric grimaced, flicking switches on the console as if he were playing some bizarre life-or-death video game. I didn't sign up to be a miner, a soldier, or a nurse. Yet here I am, playing all three. You're a real jack of all trades, Marn replied, sarcasm hanging heavy in the air. And here I thought I was just signing up for a cushy ride to the edge of the solar system. You and me both, Aelric said with a sigh, watching a new series of error messages scroll across the screen. Looks like the anomaly started playing merry hell with the platform systems. Great, Marn said, rolling her eyes. What's next, the coffee machine going homicidal? Aelric chuckled, the sound roughened by stress. If only, at least that'd be predictable. Right now, the only thing brewing is trouble, and it's strong enough to melt your fillings. Torben scurried over, his expression a blend of anxiety and reluctant determination. The lower decks are swarming with malfunctions. It's like a haunted amusement park down there. Lights flickering, doors slamming, machinery trying to chew us up. Sounds like home, Marn quipped. But seriously, Torben, what's the damage? The pressure systems are holding for now, but the power grid's a mess. If we don't stabilize it, we might end up spaced. Lovely, Aelric said, rubbing his temples. So, our options are fried circuits or a vacuum dance. That about sums it up, Torben replied with a grim nod. We need more hands to keep this thing from imploding. Then it's time we rally the troops, Aelric said, a plan forming in his mind. Let's get everyone who isn't already running around like headless chickens to the main hub. We need every finger and toe on this platform working in unison. They made their way through the Defiant's labyrinthine corridors, Marn and Aelric barking orders like seasoned drill sergeants at the miners they passed. There were no ranks here, just desperation and a shared desire to avoid ending up as cosmic debris. "Hey, you," Marn shouted, pointing at a group of workers huddled in the hallway like nervous livestock. "Get your asses in gear and meet us at the hub. We're all in this together whether we like it or not." "But what about the bosses?" one of them asked, a tone of uncertainty lacing his words. Aelric snorted. "You really think they give a damn about us? We're just numbers to them. If we want to make it out alive, we have to look out for each other." "Now move." The crowd dispersed, a wave of adrenaline and begrudging unity propelling them forward. It was a motley crew, each member a cog in the Defiant's haphazardly assembled machine of survival. "Remind me never to get on your bad side," Marn said, a smirk playing on her lips. "Ditto," Aelric replied, the pair sharing a brief moment of camaraderie amidst the chaos. "Seriously, though, if we don't pull together, we're done for. The caste system up top couldn't care less if we all turn into stardust." "Yeah, they're probably busy arguing over whose fault this all is," Marn said. "I can almost hear them now. It's definitely a human error, Jenkins. No, it's a software glitch, Smith." "Meanwhile, we're down here holding the pieces together with spit and prayer," Aelric said, frustration edging his voice. "But if they won't help us, then we'll just have to save ourselves." The main hub of the Defiant was a cramped, utilitarian space, dominated by a central console surrounded by smaller stations that hummed with activity. Aelric could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating as Jupiter's gaseous exterior. "All right, listen up," Aelric said, addressing the assembled miners, engineers, and assorted hands on deck. "We've got multiple malfunctions, and the pressure systems are only stable for the moment. Unless you all have a hidden death wish, we need to turn this floating disaster into something resembling operational." "What do we do?" asked a burly miner who looked like he bench-pressed asteroids for fun. "Right now, we need to divide and conquer," Marn said, taking the reins. "Some of you need to focus on the power grid. Torben will direct you. Others need to monitor the pressure systems. If they go off, we're all screwed." The workers exchanged glances, a spark of determination lighting up their weary faces. Aelric felt a flicker of pride. Maybe they were starting to realize they were more than just drones, more than just tools in the hands of the upper echelons. "What about the anomaly?" someone piped up. "Leave that to us," Aelric said. "Right now, we need to make sure this platform stays in one piece long enough for us to figure out what to do about it." Heads nodded, the ragtag group springing into action with newfound purpose. Aelric and Marn watched as the hub transformed into a hive of activity, the workers driven not by hierarchy, but by the primal urge to survive. "Almost makes you feel like we've got a shot, huh?" Marn said, her voice carrying a rare note of optimism. "Don't get too comfortable," Aelric replied, though he shared her sentiment. "We're still neck-deep in it, but at least we're swimming, not sinking." As the workers set to their tasks, Aelric turned his attention back to the central console. He could feel the platform's instability, a living, breathing entity teetering on the brink of disaster. But within that chaos, he also felt the burgeoning unity of their makeshift team, a force as sturdy as the Defiant's titanium hull. "Okay, let's see what we're dealing with," Aelric muttered, scanning the console's readouts. Marn peered over his shoulder, her gaze sharp and focused. Any chance we can isolate the anomaly's impact on the systems? Give us some breathing room worth a shot, Aelric said, his fingers dancing over the keys with newfound confidence. If we can pinpoint where it's hitting us hardest, maybe we can put up some defenses, or at least a do not disturb sign, Marn quipped. Together, they dove into the data, dissecting the platform's systems with the precision of seasoned surgeons. Time slipped away, the alarms and distant shouts fading into background noise as they concentrated on the task at hand. There, Aelric said at last, gesturing to a glowing section of the display. That's where it's focused, the upper deck's power distribution. If we can isolate it, we might just keep the rest of the platform stable. Everything about this feels like a house of cards, Marn said, absently twirling a stray lock of hair around her finger. But if it buys us a little more time, I'm all for it. Better than the alternative, Aelric agreed. Let's just hope the anomaly doesn't have a backup plan. As they worked, the hub around them hummed with frantic energy. Workers rushed to and fro, shouting to be heard over the din, their movements a testament to the chaotic dance of survival. "Hey, Aelric," Torben called, his voice barely audible above the clatter of activity. "Yeah," Aelric replied, looking up from the console. "Thanks for, not giving up on us," Torben said, his tone uncharacteristically sincere. "I know I'm usually about as useful as a screen door on a spaceship, but it means a lot." Aelric smiled, the gesture more genuine than he'd have thought possible mere hours ago. "Don't sell yourself short, Torben. You pulled through when it mattered. That's more than most can say." The worker's face lit up with a bashful grin, his confidence bolstered by Aelric's words. It was a small victory, but in a situation where every win counted, it was enough to push them forward. As the minutes ticked by, Aelric and Marn continued to work their magic on the console, looping in the anomaly's effects like a fisherman snaring a particularly slippery eel. The process was slow and laborious, each keystroke coated in a thick layer of tension. Finally, with a triumphant beep, the console displayed a message they'd scarcely dared hope for: anomaly isolated. Systems stabilizing. "We did it," Marn said, disbelief coloring her voice. "We actually did it for now," Aelric said, though he couldn't keep the relief from his tone. "But we're not out of the woods yet." "Yeah, but I'll take a temporary reprieve over certain doom any day," Marn replied, a grin spreading across her face. The atmosphere in the hub shifted, the palpable tension giving way to a swell of cautious optimism. Aelric knew they weren't in the clear, but for the first time he allowed himself to believe that they had a fighting chance. "All right, everyone," he said, addressing the gathered workers. "We've bought ourselves some time, but we can't let our guard down. We need to keep monitoring the systems, make sure nothing else goes haywire." The workers nodded, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and determination. They understood the gravity of their situation, but they also knew they weren't alone in the fight. "Let's keep this ship together," Marn said, her voice carrying the weight of their newfound unity. "Together we can make it through this." Aelric nodded, sharing a moment of silent agreement with her. Whatever happened next, they were in it together, and that was more than he dared hope for before the chaos had begun. As they returned to their stations, the platforms hum a comforting reminder of their success. Aelric allowed himself a fleeting moment of hope. They might be trapped in a tin can at the mercy of an uncaring universe, but as long as they stood together, they had a chance. And in this harsh, unforgiving world, that was the best they could ask for. Aelric was trying to savor his victory over the console when the day decided to flip him the cosmic bird. He barely had time to bask in the temporary stabilization when the comms unit crackled to life with the dulcet tones of Overseer Trelvan, their resident overlord with all the charm of a tax audit. "Attention all personnel on the Defiant," Trelvan announced, his voice oozing with the kind of authority that made you want to slap him with a wrench. "It has come to my attention that certain unauthorized actions have been taken in an attempt to stabilize the platform. Rest assured, we are handling the situation. Handling it with what? A blindfold and a broken compass." Marn muttered under her breath, rolling her eyes as Trelvon prattled on about chain of command and unauthorized this and insubordination that. Aelric smirked, though his amusement was tempered by the knowledge that Trelvon's version of handling usually involved making things worse. I guess he found his way out from under his desk, and now he's sending in the goons, Marn added, nodding towards the display that showed several enforcers stomping through the lower decks like they owned the place. Looks like Trelvon's got a new plan. Make sure we fail while looking busy. You've got to admire the efficiency, Aelric remarked dryly. Who knew you could cram so much incompetence into one man? The mood in the hub shifted as the gravity of their situation sunk in. The workers who had been buoyed by their recent success were now watching the screens with a mix of trepidation and exhaustion. The enforcers, all clad in matching outfits that screamed wannabe stormtrooper, were an unwelcome reminder that their efforts, no matter how earnest, were not going unnoticed by the powers that be. Torben, hovering nearby, looked like someone had switched his coffee out for motor oil. Oh, this is just what we needed. More suits to tell us how we're doing everything wrong. Don't worry, Torben, Aelric said, clapping him on the shoulder. If history's taught us anything, it's that the little guy always gets the short end of the stick first. Yeah, but sometimes the little guy's got a bigger stick hiding somewhere, Marn added, flashing Torben a reassuring grin. Thanks, I think, Torben replied, though he didn't seem any less worried. The enforcers, oblivious to the drama they were about to unleash, were making their way towards the engineering deck, where the platform's lifeblood was kept sloshing about. Aelric and Marn exchanged a look, knowing that things were about to get even more interesting, and not in the good way. Should we do something about them? Marn asked, her expression one of cautious optimism layered with a heavy dose of cynicism. Aelric shrugged. I suppose we could try talking to them. Maybe they'll be receptive to reason. Marn arched an eyebrow. Did you forget what ship we're on? Yeah, Aelric said, waving a dismissive hand. But look at it this way, worst case we get to exercise our rhetorical skills. Best case? Marn asked. We convince them to get lost, Aelric replied with a grin. Or at least to not break anything important, Marn added. It didn't take long to catch up to the enforcers, whose sense of direction was about as reliable as a knockoff GPS. Their leader, a squinty-eyed brute with a jawline that could double as a battering ram, was barking orders like he'd just come off a leadership seminar for aspiring despots. Hey, Chief, Aelric called out, sauntering up with Marn by his side. Looking for something. We heard there's a sale on brains down at the market. The enforcer leader turned, his expression a cocktail of consternation and disdain. Who the hell are you? Just a couple of concerned citizens trying to keep this tin can from turning into a meteor shower, Marn said sweetly. Yeah. Well, we're under orders to make sure you don't screw it up, Squinty replied, crossing his arms over his chest like it was a tactical maneuver. Aelric chuckled. I'd say we're doing a better job than you lot. Or did Trelvon send you down here for a self-esteem boost? The enforcers bristled, but Aelric wasn't about to back down. He knew their type, big on brawn, short on patience. All he needed to do was outlast their attention spans. We're under orders, Squinty reiterated, though his conviction wavered as he took in the defiant faces around him. Aelric leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Listen, pal, I get it. Orders are orders, but maybe we can work something out. How about you let us keep doing what we're doing, and in return, we don't mention the time you almost walked into a reactor core. Squinty hesitated, clearly unused to negotiation that didn't involve threats or heavy objects. Marn stepped in, sensing the opportunity. Think of it as a win-win, she said, flashing her best trust-me smile. We get to keep the ship running and you get to tell Trelvon how you heroically prevented a disaster. Yeah, and you can throw in a couple of embellishments for good measure, Aelric added. Make it sound like a holodrama. The enforcer leader shifted uncomfortably, the gears in his head turning slowly. Fine. But if this goes south, it won't, Aelric interrupted, clapping Squinty on the back. Trust me. You'll be the hero of the Ior." With that, the enforcers reluctantly backed off, leaving Aelric and Marn with the unenviable task of explaining to their crew why they hadn't been forcefully ejected from the nearest airlock. "Well, that was fun," Torben said, watching the enforcers retreat. "Think they bought it?" Marn shrugged. "They don't strike me as the kind who'd question a good day's work if they can avoid it." Aelric nodded. "Right. Now let's get back to saving our skins, shall we?" The crew, though visibly shaken by the enforcers' bluster, quickly returned to their tasks, driven by the realization that their survival depended not on authority, but on each other. It was a sobering thought, but one that galvanized them into action. As Aelric and Marn resumed their work, they couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie blossoming among their crew. It was the kind of bond that grew in the shadow of adversity, where every small victory felt like a triumph of the human spirit. Sure, they were still at the mercy of Jupiter's capricious whims, and the threat of the anomaly loomed large overhead. But as long as they had each other, and a healthy dose of cynicism to keep things grounded, they figured they had a fighting chance. "You ever think about how we got here?" Torben asked, breaking the silence as they worked. "What, existentially?" Aelric replied, shooting him a sidelong glance. "Yeah, I mean, we're just a bunch of nobodies holding $1 billion piece of junk together with duct tape and hope," Torben said, sounding more bemused than bitter. Marn snorted. "Welcome to life on the fringes of human achievement, where every day is a balancing act between brilliance and idiocy. It's a miracle we haven't blown ourselves up yet," Aelric added, grinning. "Don't jinx it," Torben warned, though he smiled despite himself. For all the chaos and uncertainty, Aelric realized that this ragtag crew of misfits and malcontents had something their illustrious leaders lacked: heart. It sounded cheesy, sure, but there was a reason humanity had clawed its way through history's dumpster fire of challenges. And for all the times it had been knocked down, it had always gotten back up again, ready for more. "So, what's the plan?" Marn asked, breaking him from his reverie. "Keep doing what we're doing," Aelric said. "At least until Trelvan finds another way to kill us." Optimistic as ever, Marn quipped. "Hey, if there's one thing we're good at, it's surviving against the odds," Aelric replied with a shrug. "Besides, look on the bright side of deep space living. No neighbors to complain about the noise, or the smells," Torben added, wrinkling his nose. "Seriously, when's the last time this place got a decent air scrub? You'd think they'd spring for an air freshener at least," Marn remarked. Aelric chuckled, getting back to work amidst the banter and camaraderie. It wasn't much, but as far as silver linings went, it would do. As the Iors slipped by, the crew inched closer to a semblance of stability, patching up systems and rerouting power with the kind of determination that only a looming death could inspire. They might not have been the best or the brightest, but they were resourceful, and that was enough for now. Trelvan's enforcers lingered on the periphery, their presence as comforting as a shark in a kiddie pool, but they didn't interfere. Aelric silently thanked whatever cosmic deity might be listening for small favors. As the shift edged towards its conclusion, Aelric took a moment to survey the hub. The flickering lights, the cacophony of machinery, the smell of burnt circuits, it was all part and parcel of life on the Defiant. But there was something else too. An undercurrent of hope, however fragile, that pulsed beneath the surface like a heartbeat. They weren't just numbers or cogs or expendable assets. They were people, fallible, stubborn, and irrepressibly human. And so, even as the threat of the anomaly loomed large, and Trelvan's enforcers plotted their next move, Aelric allowed himself to believe that they might just make it through this, bruised and battered, but unbowed. Because in the end, what else was there but to keep fighting, laughing in the face of disaster, and flipping the universe the bird at every opportunity? It was the human way, and damn if Aelric wouldn't give it his all. As the crew drifted towards their bunks, exhausted but emboldened, he shared a last look with Marn and Torben. A silent promise that whatever came next, they'd face it together. And in that moment, as the vast, indifferent cosmos spun silently beyond the hull, Aelric felt a glimmer of something he hadn't dared to feel since the crisis began: Hope. So, what do you say? Aelric asked, breaking the silence. Same time tomorrow, Marn smirked. Only if you're buying the drinks, Torben chuckled. Just make sure to duck when the next disaster hits, Aelric grinned, nodding to himself. Deal. And with that the trio headed off into the dim corridors, ready to face whatever fresh hell awaited them. Together. The Defiant was still creaking like an old man's knees under Jupiter's relentless gravity, and Aelric couldn't help but think the whole thing was a cosmic joke waiting for its punchline. He tapped the data screen, a tangled mess of numbers and graphs that made about as much sense as a salad in a steakhouse. Overly complex, like trying to explain quantum physics to a toddler, he muttered, half to himself, half to Marn, who was elbow-deep in a panel that looked like it had been assembled by a drunk mechanic with a grudge against organization. You talking about the ship or Trelvan's idea of leadership? Marn replied, her voice muffled by the mass of wires. Aelric snorted. Both, probably. But right now, I'm focused on this damn platform. It's like someone designed it with a manual written by Kafka. Sounds about right, she said, yanking a wire free and watching it spark with all the enthusiasm of a party popper. So, what's the plan, genius? Aelric leaned back, surveying the mess with the kind of grim satisfaction that came from realizing he could use stupidity to their advantage. We make it simple. Dumb it down so even Trelvan could operate it without accidentally launching us into the sun. Simple, Marn repeated, eyebrows arching skeptically. You know where we are, right? The Defiant doesn't do simple. Aelric nodded, already feeling the edges of a plan slotting into place. Sure, but the thing about overly complex systems is they're full of holes. Easy to bypass if you stop thinking like an engineer and more like a saboteur, or a con artist, Marn said, grinning. So, what's the play? Aelric tapped his forehead, a glint of mischief in his eyes. We go manual. Bypass the automated defenses by rigging the systems to think they are already working fine. We'll use some old-school tricks, something even the system's paranoid sensors won't catch. Marn looked intrigued, or perhaps just desperate enough to consider the idea. What do you need from me? Your charming personality and a few spare hands. We're going to need to do some creative rewiring, and I'd rather not do it alone with only Torben's coffee breath for company. Hey, Torben called out from the other side of the deck, looking affronted. I resent that. My breath's the only thing keeping some of these systems running, more like keeping them awake. Aelric shot back, raising a hand to forestall further debate. Anyway, gather the crew. We've got a date with stupidity, and I don't want to be stood up. Within the Ior, the motley crew was assembled, eyes wide with curiosity and just a hint of skepticism. Aelric laid out his plan, gesturing animatedly as he detailed the tweaks and jury rigging required to fool the system's checks. Think of it as giving the platform a lobotomy, he concluded, arms crossed defiantly. We're going to pull a fast one on the tech overlords. The crew exchanged glances, a silent conversation of raised eyebrows and half-shrugs. It was risky, sure, but then again, breathing was risky aboard the Defiant, so what was one more gamble? So, we're betting on the old turn-it-off-and-on-again strategy, but with style. Torben asked, his voice heavy with sarcasm. Pretty much, Aelric agreed. But with a bit more finesse, and less chance of frying us all. Just call it an unconventional reboot, Marn added. Should be enough to keep Trelvan's cronies busy wondering what the hell just happened. With a nod of reluctant approval from the crew, they set to work. Aelric and Marn coordinated the operation, directing workers like conductors of a very chaotic orchestra. Panels were pried open, wires stripped and reconnected, and circuits rerouted with the kind of reckless abandon that would give any self-respecting engineer a heart attack. Reminds me of my last date, Marn remarked, elbow deep in circuitry. A total mess that somehow still worked out. Hope your date didn't involve potential explosions, Aelric replied, grinning as he soldered a connection with the precision of a surgeon who'd had too much coffee. Only emotional ones, she quipped, glancing up with a smirk. Meanwhile, Torben was busy wrestling a stubborn panel that refused to budge. "You'd think they designed these things to withstand an apocalypse," he grumbled, finally prying it loose with a grunt. "Or maybe just to frustrate anyone without a wrench the size of an ego. Egos aren't in short supply on this ship," Aelric pointed out. "Just look at Trelvon." The plan, as convoluted as it was, began to take shape. Slowly but surely, the crew's efforts paid off, culminating in a patchwork of improvised solutions that would have made Mac Jiver proud. Sure, it wasn't perfect, but then, what was on this ship? Marn took a step back, glancing at the jerry-rigged setup with a critical eye. "If this doesn't work, we're dead. If it doesn't work, we'll be dead heroes," Aelric corrected. "But I'm betting on it working. You and your optimism," Torben snorted. "Keep betting on those long shots and you might just win a trip out an airlock." The moment of truth arrived. Aelric wiped the sweat from his brow, hands steady despite the stakes. "All right, people. Let's see if we can pull a miracle out of our collective asses." With a final nod from Marn, he flipped the switch. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, the kind of silence that stretched and twisted with potential energy. Then, with a groan and a whir, the systems hummed back to life, lights flickering before settling into a steady glow. Aelric held his breath, the tension in the room as thick as the oily air. The platform systems, recalibrated and pacified, reported all clear. No alarms, no sudden explosions. Just a blissful, serene calm that was as unexpected as it was welcome. Torben let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. It actually worked." "Of course it worked," Aelric said, feigning nonchalance. "I never doubted it for a second." "Yeah, right," Marn scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You were sweating like a guilty politician." The crew broke into relieved laughter, the sound echoing through the cramped space like a celebration of survival against the odds. It wasn't a complete victory, not yet, but it was a start. A foothold against the chaos, a reminder that even when the chips were down, they had each other. "So what's next?" Torben asked, part curiosity, part hope. "Next," Aelric repeated, glancing at Marn, who shrugged with a grin. "We keep doing what we do best, improvising, surviving, and keeping one step ahead of whatever fresh hell Trelvon throws our way." Marn nodded, her expression determined. "We've got the upper hand now. Let's make sure it stays that way." And so they did, working late into the ship's artificial night, patching and tweaking, making sure their hastily concocted solutions held steady. It was exhausting, grueling work, but there was a satisfaction in it, a sense of purpose that transcended the drudgery. By the time they finally called it a day, the crew was bone-tired but buoyed by success. Aelric and Marn shared a last look, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They'd done the impossible, or at least the improbable, and lived to tell the tale. "Think Trelvon will notice?" Marn asked as they headed towards their quarters, steps dragging with fatigue. "If he does, he'll just assume it was his brilliant leadership," Aelric replied, voice heavy with sarcasm. "But we'll know the truth." "Damn right," Marn agreed, punching him lightly on the arm. As they parted ways for the night, Aelric couldn't help but smile to himself. It wasn't much, this victory, but it was theirs. A testament to human ingenuity, to the power of wit and grit, and to the stubborn refusal to give in. And maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something more, a tide turning, a chance to truly defy the odds. For now, though, it was enough to know that they'd made it through another day, bruised, battered, but unbroken. "Same time tomorrow," Marn's voice called out as he reached his door. "Only if you promise not to steal my tools again," Aelric shot back with a grin. "No promises," she laughed, disappearing into her quarters. With a final chuckle, Aelric entered his own cramped space, the weight of exhaustion settling in. But it was a good kind of tired, a satisfying ache that spoke of hard work and harder-won triumphs. As he lay down, the hum of the ship a familiar lullaby, Aelric let his mind drift. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own battles. But for now, he was content to rest, to savor the moment, and to dream of a future where they could finally tell Trelvon to shove it. Because if there was one thing he'd learned, it was that even in the darkest corners of the universe, humanity had a way of shining through. It was messy, stubborn, and sometimes downright infuriating, but it was also beautiful in its own ramshackle way. And as he closed his eyes, Aelric knew that whatever came next, he'd face it with the same irreverent spirit, the same unyielding determination, and the same wry humor that had carried him this far. Tomorrow, after all, was just another day on the Defiant. The Defiant groaned and creaked, a mechanical symphony echoing through the engineering deck. Aelric stood back, arms crossed, surveying the motley crew and their hastily rigged marvel. He couldn't help but grin, despite the stench of burnt circuits clinging to his nostrils like a bad joke. "Well, gang," he said, voice booming over the clamor, "looks like we've managed to slap a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Let's see how long this holds." Marn, wiping soot from her hands with a rag that looked more like an old sock, sidled up to him. "Think the enforcers will catch on?" Aelric shrugged, a smirk playing across his face. "If they were any brighter, they'd be dim." Marn chuckled, her eyes darting to the flickering screens that confirmed their success. "What next, fearless leader? Start a mutiny?" "Overthrow Trelvon, one disaster at a time," Aelric replied, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "But it's not a terrible idea." Torben staggered over, wiping his brow with his sleeve. "I say we raise a glass to surviving another day, or at least a cup of whatever they call coffee around here." "Right, because the last thing we need is more caffeine-induced paranoia," Aelric quipped, eyeing the steaming mug in Torben's hand. "But sure, let's celebrate living to die another day." The crew gathered around, forming a rough circle. Torben raised his mug high, his expression solemn yet mischievous. "To the Defiant. May she stay in one piece long enough for us to blow her up by ourselves." The laughter was raucous, a needed catharsis after the tension of the past few hours. Aelric looked around at his team, a ragtag bunch held together by desperation and gallows humor. They weren't heroes, not by a long shot, but they were his kind of people. A sudden crackle from the comms unit interrupted their revelry, Overseer Trelvon's voice oozing through like an unwelcome spill. "What the hell's going on down there?" "Report." Marn rolled her eyes, her hand finding its way to her forehead in mock exasperation. "Ah, the dulcet tones of our dear overlord." Aelric grabbed the comms device, flipping it on with a flourish. "Oh, nothing much, Trelvon, just a little maintenance. You know, the kind that keeps us from becoming one with Jupiter's core." "Cut the crap, Aelric," Trelvon snapped. "I'm not in the mood for your theatrics." "Funny, I thought theatrics were your specialty," Aelric shot back, enjoying the irritation he could almost hear simmering on the other end. "Get back to work," Trelvon barked, his voice fading as he presumably stomped off to terrorize someone else. Aelric clicked off the comms, turning back to his crew. "Well, looks like we've got the green light to carry on. Or a warning to keep our heads down," Torben pointed out dryly. "Semantics," Aelric replied with a grin. "Now let's get back to making sure this tin can doesn't implode." The crew dispersed, each heading back to their stations with a renewed sense of purpose. The crisis had given them a taste of victory, and like any addiction, they wanted more. "Hey, Aelric," Marn called, lagging behind as the others moved on. "I've been thinking. Maybe we don't have to settle for just staying alive." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Got something in mind?" "Yeah," she said, her voice lowering conspiratorially. "What if we use this chaos to our advantage? Stir things up a bit more. Expose the cracks in their precious hierarchy." Aelric considered her words the seed of an idea taking root. "Could be risky, could be fun," Marn countered with a sly grin. "All right," he said, nodding slowly. "Let's see how much trouble we can cause." They set about their work with a new objective in mind. It was no longer just about survival, it was about making a statement. Showing Trelvon and his ilk that they weren't as invincible as they thought. Over the next few days, Aelric and Marn orchestrated a series of accidental malfunctions. Nothing too serious, just enough to keep the enforcers scrambling and Trelvon's blood pressure rising. They manipulated systems, rerouted power, and generally made a nuisance of themselves. "Think they'll catch on?" Torben asked one evening as they gathered in a secluded corner of the lower decks. "Not if we keep them chasing their tails," Aelric replied, a wicked gleam in his eye. Marn chuckled, her fingers deftly twisting wires into place. "It's like playing God with a really crap set of tools." The crew embraced the chaos, each contributing in their own way. They were creative, resourceful, and above all, united in their cause. The caste system, once a monolithic force, began to show its weaknesses. As their antics continued, the workers on the Defiant started to take notice. Whispers spread through the ship, tales of mysterious glitches and unexplained errors. Rumors of rebellion, though whispered, gained traction. One evening, as Aelric and Marn patched a particularly finicky circuit, a group of workers approached, eyes alight with curiosity and something else, hope. "Is it true?" One of them, a lanky man with grease-streaked cheeks, asked. "Are you the ones causing all this mess?" Aelric exchanged a glance with Marn, their silent conversation one of agreement. "Depends on who's asking." "We are," another worker, a middle-aged woman with arms like tree trunks, said. Her voice was low but resolute. "We're tired of being treated like dirt. If you're sticking it to the man, we want in." Aelric looked around at the gathered faces, a motley mix of fear, determination, and desperation. They were sick of the status quo, ready to take a stand. It was risky, but then again, what wasn't on the Defiant? "All right," Aelric said, nodding slowly. "But this isn't a fairy tale, no heroics, just smart, calculated moves. We hit them where it hurts their pride and their pocketbooks." Marn grinned, tapping a finger to her temple. "And we do it our way, messy, stubborn, and with a smile." The workers murmured their assent, a quiet rebellion beginning to take shape. They had been pushed to the brink, and now they were ready to push back. As their operation gained momentum, the enforcers found themselves outmatched, their every attempt to regain control thwarted by a crew that refused to play by the rules. The caste system, once a rigid structure, began to crumble under the weight of its flaws. "Think Trelvan's sweating yet?" Torben asked one day as they watched a particularly flustered enforcer storm past, muttering under his breath. "If he isn't, he will be soon," Marn replied, a mischievous twinkle in her eye. The plan, as audacious as it was, began to bear fruit. The workers, emboldened by their success, started to assert their rights, demanding better treatment and conditions. It was a revolution in the making, one born of necessity and nurtured by defiance. Aelric stood back, watching the tide turn with a mix of pride and disbelief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had sparked a change. "What's next?" Marn asked, coming to stand beside him. He shrugged, a lopsided grin on his face. "Keep pushing, keep fighting. And maybe, just maybe, show Trelvan and his cronies that we're not just expendable cogs in their machine." The Defiant, once a symbol of oppression, had become a beacon of resistance. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was a start. And that was enough for Aelric and his crew. As the ship sailed through the cosmos, a newfound spirit of rebellion in its wake, Aelric couldn't help but marvel at the power of human ingenuity. They had taken a seemingly impossible situation and turned it on its head, all through sheer force of will and a healthy dose of irreverence. But he knew better than to rest on his laurels. The fight was far from over, and tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But for now, he was content to savor the moment, to relish in their victory and the knowledge that they had made a difference. Because in the end, it wasn't just about survival. It was about living, truly living, in a world that often tried to strip away their humanity. And that, Aelric thought with a wry smile, was something worth fighting for. As the artificial night descended once more, the crew gathered for a well-earned rest, spirits high, laughter echoing through the corridors of the Defiant. They were a scrappy bunch, held together by camaraderie and a shared sense of purpose, and they wouldn't have had it any other way. "Same time tomorrow?" Torben asked, raising his mug in a familiar salute. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Aelric replied, clinking his own cup against Torben's. They dispersed into the dimly lit halls, each retreating to their quarters with a sense of accomplishment, a feeling that tomorrow just might be a little bit brighter. As Aelric lay down, the hum of the ship a soothing presence, he couldn't help but chuckle to himself. They had taken on the odds and come out on top, not with heroics or grand gestures, but with grit, determination, and a whole lot of snark. And as he drifted off to sleep, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them head-on, with the same irreverent spirit that had carried them this far. Because if there was one thing the Defiant had taught him, it was that even in the darkest corners of the universe, there was always room for a little rebellion. Aelric woke up with a start, not because he was well-rested, but because the ship's alarms were blaring like a tone-deaf choir. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, pulling himself up from the makeshift bed. It was a wonder the alarm still worked, considering how everything else on the Defiant seemed to be held together by spit and prayer. "Performance art, courtesy of our beloved tin can," he muttered, making his way to the control room. Marn was already there, fingers flying over the data screen with the finesse of a pianist having a bad day. "Morning," she said, without looking up. Her voice was laced with sarcasm, a sure sign things were going just as expected. "Mornin', what's the catastrophe du jour? Same old, same old. Trelvan's having another meltdown. Apparently he doesn't appreciate the creative redistribution of resources." Aelric grinned. "Creative redistribution. That's a new one. Well, I figured systematic looting might be a bit too on the nose. The crew had been up to their usual shenanigans, and it seemed Trelvan was finally catching on. Desperation was a funny thing. It could make a person do things they never thought possible, like lead a rebellion from the belly of a decrepit spaceship." Torben stumbled in, his eyes still heavy with sleep, clutching a cup of whatever passed for coffee these days. "Did I miss the apocalypse? Again?" "Just the prelude," Aelric replied, pointing to the data screen. "Looks like our esteemed overlord's in a tizzy. Poor guy. Must be hard ruling over a ship that's determined to self-destruct." Marn snorted, still tapping away. "Speaking of destruction, our friends below decks are getting bolder. They want to take Trelvan down for good." Aelric raised an eyebrow. "Mutiny with a capital M. Mutiny with a capital F-U, actually," Marn corrected. "Nice. Well, if we're going to start this little revolution, we better make it worth their while." The ship had been their battlefield, every creaking corridor and flickering light a testament to their struggle. It wasn't much, but it was home, and home could be a powerful motivator. "Let's not kid ourselves," Aelric said, leaning against the wall. "Trelvan's not going down without a fight. He's got enough enforcers to field a small, angry army. So we're screwed," Torben summarized cheerfully, taking a sip from his mug. "Not necessarily. We've got the numbers, and more importantly, we've got the people who actually know how this ship works." The notion of revolt had been simmering for weeks, but now it seemed on the verge of boiling over. The workers were ready, and Aelric's crew had become their unwitting leaders. The door slid open, and Overseer Trelvan stormed in with all the grace of a bull in a pottery shop. "What the hell is going on here?" he barked, his face a lovely shade of beetroot. "Good morning to you too, Trelvan," Aelric said, his tone as sweet as poison. "Can we help you with something?" "I don't have time for your games, Aelric. We're on the brink of catastrophe, and you're playing at being rebels." "On the brink? I'd say we've already fallen off the cliff." Trelvan glared, the vein in his temple pulsing rhythmically. "If this ship goes down, it's on your head." Aelric shrugged. "Maybe, but at least we'll go down swinging. Defiant to the end, eh? You do realize that once the corporation finds out about this, they'll cut us off." "Supplies, repairs, everything." "Let them," Marn interjected, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "We'll make do, we always have. The workers are with us," Torben added, leaning back in his chair, "and they're ready for change." "Change?" Trelvan scoffed. "What makes you think change will improve anything? People need structure, order. Without it, there's chaos." Aelric chuckled, crossing his arms. "Chaos might just be what we need. Besides, I'd rather take my chances with chaos than spend another minute under your thumb." Trelvon opened his mouth to retort, but the ship's intercom crackled to life, interrupting him. "Attention, all personnel. This is an emergency. All hands on deck." The message repeated, the urgency unmistakable. Whatever was brewing, it demanded their attention now. "Looks like we're out of time," Aelric said, pushing past Trelvon. "Ready to get your hands dirty?" Marn and Torben nodded, their expressions determined. They'd come this far, there was no turning back now. "You won't get away with this," Trelvon called after them, but his voice was already fading into the background noise. The corridor was alive with activity, workers bustling about, their faces a mix of determination and fear. There was something electric in the air, a sense of anticipation that was almost tangible. Aelric's crew joined the throng, their presence felt like a rallying cry. This was it, the moment they'd been building towards, the tipping point. "All right, everyone," Aelric shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We all know what's at stake. If we want change, we have to fight for it. Are you with me?" The response was a resounding cheer, a wave of sound that echoed through the narrow corridors. It was a sound that spoke of hope, defiance, and a longing for freedom. The crowd surged forward, a mass of bodies moving as one. The enforcers, caught off guard, struggled to maintain control, but the tide had turned. Marn was at Aelric's side, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Looks like we've got our work cut out for us." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Aelric replied, his grin wide and fearless. They moved through the ship, rallying more workers to their cause, each step a victory. The Defiant was theirs not in name but in spirit. In the chaos, Aelric found himself face to face with Trelvon once more. The Overseer's expression was one of disbelief, as if he couldn't quite fathom the sight before him. "Why?" Trelvon asked, his voice low and bewildered. "Why throw it all away?" "Because it's worth it," Aelric replied simply. "Because it's our future." "Your future?" Trelvon repeated, shaking his head. "You're just a bunch of fools chasing a dream." "Maybe," Aelric conceded, "but at least it's our dream. And that's more than you've ever offered." The confrontation ended as abruptly as it had begun, the press of bodies pushing them apart. The rebellion had taken on a life of its own, a force that couldn't be stopped. As the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded, the true weight of their actions began to sink in. The Defiant, once a symbol of oppression, now stood as a testament to their strength and determination. The caste system lay in ruins, dismantled by those it sought to crush. The workers were no longer just cogs in a machine. They were free men and women, united in their victory. Aelric stood on the bridge, overlooking the scene below. The ship was theirs now, a patchwork of ideals and makeshift repairs, but it was theirs. Marn joined him, her expression one of satisfaction. "Looks like we did it." "Yeah," Aelric agreed, a smile tugging at his lips. "We did." Torben appeared, his presence grounding them. "What now?" "Now," Aelric said, his voice steady, "we rebuild. We make this ship a home, a real one." "And Trelvon?" Marn asked, her tone curious. Aelric shrugged. "He's got a choice, join us or leave. Either way, he's not our problem anymore." The future lay before them, an open expanse of possibility. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be challenges ahead, but they were ready to face them. Together. Because if there was one thing they'd learned, it was that even in the darkest corners of the universe, there was always room for a little rebellion and a lot of hope.